Hello, friends. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Mindy Preddy. I'm an Executive National Vice President with Arbonne, and I am so super excited to have us with Boegar here today because we're going to talk about all things fasting. And if you guys have noticed, it's kind of trending right now, fasting and the topic of fasting, but there's definitely a reason why. And so also able to give back through her time sharing this topic. And it's actually 1,100 meals right now, going to the kids in Haiti to be exact. And I asked her to just share a little blurb on that before she gets started today. But I'm going to go ahead and formally introduce her. And you guys are in for a super treat. She's a mom, she's a wife, she's an executive national vice president with Arbonne, and she's also a highly respected neuroscientist for over 26 years. She's studied everything from autism to Alzheimer's. She's even a published author. And she functions now as a pro bono functional neuroscientist, and she's retired because of Arbonne. She's worked as a professor and had a neurosurgical program at both UCs in California, as well as NIH in Maryland and also Arizona State. She was a research director for the #1 neuropsychiatrist in the world and studied at the biggest brain bank of human brains on record, which sounds really interesting to me because I'm also a science nerd. But they studied together concussive disorders in NFL football players, veterans exposed to traumatic brain injury and PTSD, along with the study of vaccines. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mo. And thank you so much, Mo, for being here for us tonight.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. And based on that intro, can't you guys tell that I am just the funnest person that you'll ever hang out with for 30 minutes? You guys are like, oh, she sounds like a blast. Don't worry, neuroscientists aren't really known to be very cool or very fun, but we are absolutely geeks. And I always say I am the president of the Geek Squad. I am the leader of the Brainy Bunch. I am the ambassador of the Nerd Herd. And I welcome anybody who already sees themselves in one of those three crews or wants to jump on board, because you guys, the brain is the sexiest part of your body. And when people ask me, what's the most expensive thing you own? I say my brain. And I really believe that. And I want it to be the most expensive thing I own for the rest of my life. I want to put so much money and so much time and so much energy and so much effort and so much care into taking care of it. Because as Mindy said, I'm a mom of 5. I am a wife to Cade. I am a daughter, and I would be devastated to not remember my life at the end of it. That is literally the wheel that wakes me up every morning. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't live with that kind of fear, but my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. And I have it in my mind that I am going to do everything I can to stave off being in that situation for my own neurological wellness, as well as for what would potentially become my family caregivers, because it was my mom and her 3 sisters who became her caregivers. And it is a very difficult place to be for care receiver as well as for caregivers. And I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir tonight. So what I really hope to do with this time is I hope to talk to you guys about some myths, some misconceptions, and some major things that you can do with your body, with your brain, to help protect you from various neurological conditions, whether it's Alzheimer's or whether it's stroke or whether it's Parkinson's disease or various autoimmune conditions or even depressive conditions and anxiety conditions. You guys, I'm going to step on my soapbox for a minute, and I'm going to say something that might not be popular, but amongst neuroscientists, this is the understanding. There is no such thing as a mental illness. Every illness is physiological. It doesn't matter if you call it mental. Depression, anxiety are no less physiological than diabetes or cancer. They shouldn't be lumped into a separate category. And if you want, I will have a very diplomatic conversation with you on Instagram about that. But basically, this is field work that we know as neuropsychologists, neurologists, neuroscientists, that your brain is in control of behaviors, both positive behaviors and negative behaviors, and the physiology of that brain changes the output of behavior. If you need a little bit more proof, let me just tell you that every single teacher who ever had a first grader walk into her classroom and mama gave the kid a Pop-Tart before school, or mama gave a different kid a protein shake before school, that teacher will tell you that the Pop-Tart actually causes the kid to be anxious, causes the kid to be a little bit unruly, it causes changes in their behavior. So to want you guys to know is that that is not what is now sort of diagnosed in the classroom as attention, is not actually a mental state. It's a physiological state. It's something we do to our gut that's talking to our brain. Okay. So one of the things I love to do is I love to talk about ways that we can protect our brain, that we can work on protecting and healing our body. And it's actually the reason I said yes to branding with Arbonne in the first place. Now, I want to give you the disclaimer that Arbonne does not identify themselves publicly or privately as a medicinal company or a healing company. They don't play in that space. They are a product company that is committed to delivering alternatives to products that we use every day already anyway, and providing the purest, safest alternatives to those products that are available on the market. But as someone who's a neuroscientist, I have to have you know that I have done my due diligence to research every product and every ingredient, because as a practitioner, that is my responsibility. I am licensed and I am responsible for imparting wisdom for my clients and for my patients about what is in the products that I recommend, so that they can make sure that they're making the safest and most efficacious decision for their body. And one of the reasons why I branded with Arbonne was because of the 2,000 ingredients that Arbonne does not allow in their products. Many of these ingredients, things like phthalates and parabens and soy, these ingredients we know to be endocrine disruptors. We know that many of these ingredients are found in umbilical cord blood of newborn babies. We know that the average newborn baby born in America has more than 200 synthetic chemicals in their body. So what does that tell us? It means that what goes on us gets in us, and sometimes what gets in us and goes on us stays in us, and it can have dramatic effects on our offspring as well as on ourselves. We know that every modern illness in the Western world has an inflammation link, meaning there is an inflammation connection. Whether there's inflammation in your body somewhere that's then affecting and causing inflammation in your brain, or there is inflammation that's actually happening in your brain, we know that there is a huge component between diet and inflammation. And we also know that there is an addiction in this country to sugar, and many of those cases, it's hidden sugars that we don't even know are in our food. I learned something phenomenal, and it wasn't in medical school. We get 80 minutes of nutrition in traditional medical school. 80 minutes, y'all. And the gut is the second brain. But I learned that high fructose corn syrup goes straight to the liver. It doesn't even hang out in the blood. It goes right to the liver. And high fructose corn syrup is embedded in so many different foods. So when you have all this information rattling around in your brain, what is one of the things that you try to do? You sort of try to look at a company that's done a lot of the research in advance and simply says no to these ingredients that we know to be toxic or harmful, or potentially toxic and harmful. And when Arbonne made the easy button for me by outlining 2,000 ingredients, that made my job a lot easier, because that was 2,000 things that I didn't have to go picking and choosing and cherry picking to find out what might be in Arbonne that I don't know about. I should preface this to let you know that the European Union actually outlaws 1,600 and the FDA outlaws 11. I'll just say that one more time because I love the message. Arbonne outlaws 2,000, the FDA outlaws 11. And you guys, I am actually not looking for big government overreach to tell me what to put in my body and not put in my body, but I am sure looking for us to not poison our kids. So let's talk a little bit about healing right now, because now I'm going to step off of my soapbox and I'm going to talk to you about something that as a neuroscientist, I've been studying for the better part of 30 years. And that is this concept that relates very much to what I just mentioned about Arbonne. You know how I said that the reason I branded with Arbonne was because of what was not in their products? That was the original thing. Honestly, one of the things I'm so fascinated about in the history of medicine, in the history of science, and in the history of healing is this concept of fasting. Because fasting is about what you don't put in your body. Basically, it's a story of absence. So where the industry and where medicine and where science and for information is flooded with what's in something, the beautiful thing about fasting is that there's nothing in it. It's you not putting anything in your body except for water, perhaps BCAAs, perhaps an herbal tea. So I'm always fascinated by the absence of, because the absence of something tells us something. I'm also really fascinated by the idea that Arbonne decided to brand with the concept of fasting. And I'll tell you why this matters to me, because as a business owner and as someone who is in medicine, I can tell you wholeheartedly, there is not a single time in my career, except for when I worked for the #1 neuropsychiatrist in the world who has an ethical cord that literally points straight north. I mean, his moral compass is amazing. But prior to any of that, my time spent in medicine was all designed for healing and for profit. What does that mean? It means that the medical industry was not going to partner with fasting because fasting is not profitable. It's free. How does someone fast? Don't put anything in your mouth. It really can be that simple. So when Arbonne launched this summer the idea of intermittent fasting, it blew me away because what it tells me is that this is a business that has decided to partner with something that monetarily costs nothing. In other words, Arbonne's promise to put people over profit was literally out on display for me. Does that make sense? Like, to me, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Now, what they also decided to do was to read the room and to recognize that it was really important that customers have the option to be able to fast well and to be able to fast safely and to be able to get some of their micro and macronutrients met should they choose to participate in intermittent fasting. So they launched this really simple program to go with fasting should you choose to use it. One of the concepts is a product to help you break your fast. One of the concepts is a product to help you with gut health wellness during your fasted and your unfasted state. And then the other product is designed to actually assist with mental clarity, with cellular healing, with detoxification. So these products are actually optional to the fasting component. And when Arbonne does something like that, it absolutely blows my mind because they're telling me, again, people over profit. And they're also recognizing that there are products that can help assist in the fasting journey that can help people to transition into their healing state. We're going to talk about those products in a minute, but before we do that, I want to talk to y'all about fasting because that's the cool part. That's the free part. That's the healing part. So I want to take you guys on a little history lesson because history, again, tells me so much about my great and deep understanding of how medicine and modern medicine evolved. And the first part is the introduction of refrigeration. You see, refrigeration came along about 300 years ago. Prior to that, humans did not have access, and particularly we have access like this in the Western world. This still doesn't exist in many parts of the globe. But now Western Americans, particularly North Americans, have access to opening up a refrigerator and having food at your fingertips 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then enter in the 40s, 50s, 60s, the mass production of food and the mass production of preservatives to allow food to have sustainability on a shelf. Well, now all of a sudden you can open up your pantry, you can open up your cupboards, and now you can have food available at your fingertips for months, sometimes years. I'm sorry, what? Sometimes years? Like, how is that possible, right? So one of the things that I'm aware of is that if I just look at history, modern refrigeration actually changed the experience that humans had with food. But our true experience with food is one of fasting. Humans didn't always have food readily available. We didn't call it fasting at the time. We simply weren't eating what we didn't have access to. So fasting isn't something that you should be scared of. In fact, fasting is something, and as a believer, I'm very confident in saying I'm a believer and the Bible tells me to fast and pray. So I love to tell you guys that anybody that's borrowed this myth or this misconception or this story from mainstream medicine that fasting is somehow dangerous for you, it's likely because there's no profit in fasting. And it's likely because modern medicine doesn't like to tell you that your body knows how to do this. And big food wants you to believe that you have to have access to food 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And guess what? Here's the problem. The body hasn't adapted to that, or the needs to that measure have not changed. In other words, food production has changed more in the last 50 years than your body's needs have changed in thousands. So recognize that there is so much power in being able to tell yourself, I can fast. My body knows what to do when I fast. Fasting is safe, and my body will actually be able to figure out how to turn my physiological story into useful energy. When we fast at right around that 14-hour mark, we start to move from a sugar burning state into a fat burning state. When we move past that point of a 16-hour period, we start to allow our brain to start using ketones for energy. You see, the beautiful thing about your body is that your body doesn't count calories. In fact, if my science is right, and sometimes I get the dates wrong, but I believe that calories is actually a numeric term that came to us from physics. It was a term used to measure the exchange of heat and energy when physicists were trying to study the combustion engine. So it's a caloric measure of energy exchange. What does that mean? Well, it means that it's been applied to nutrition because there is a energy exchange when our body has a heat adjustment. How do we have heat adjustments? Infrared sauna, cold plunging, exercising, eating, fasting. So basically, the thing that it tells me is that my body actually knows how to exchange energy. It doesn't really care about counting calories. It's an energy exchange device. Calorie is simply the term that we borrowed from physics to decide how to count those things. I want you to know that your body is far more sophisticated than anything we came up with in a physics laboratory or a scientific laboratory. And I give a lot of props to science. I'm telling you guys, I'm not beyond gratitude for the beautiful Western advances that we've made. And at the same time, I'm so aware that there's power and healing in your body. And one of the healing mechanisms is by abstaining from food. So let me just give you some of the facts. And I wrote these all down because my brain could talk about this for 30,000 hours, and we've got 10 minutes. So here's what it comes down to. A couple of the key components that I want you to know is that data, and I'm talking about great data. I usually try to choose meta-analyses, which basically are data points of multiple data points across the globe, right? I'm not just trying to look at one study out of Japan or one study out of North America. I like to look at studies that come out of Israel and Guatemala and the United States and come out of UK. So we know at this incredible meta-analysis that was done in 2022, a review of 15 different studies, is that intermittent fasting was actually linked to the risk reduction of heart disease and stroke. We also know that a 2023 study of several hundred people actually showed that intermittent fasting just 3 days a week, can reduce type 2 diabetes. And it does that because it increases insulin sensitivity. And insulin sensitivity basically is referring to how your body is able to be responsive to insulin, right? And everybody we're hearing about right now is like really a big glucose story, a real strong story about how so many people are struggling in this category. I think I've heard something like 95% of people on this in Western America are having glucose related conditions. In neuroscience, I should tell you, we call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. That's what we call it. And if you are with a neuroscientist or you have a neurologist who's not calling it type 3 diabetes, Houston, you have a problem with your practitioner. Okay. And you need to advocate for your loved one. But I share this with you because when it comes to blood sugar regulation and it comes to the data, we know that fasting is paramount to helping with blood sugar regulation and with this idea of helping our bodies be more responsive to delivering insulin. We also know that the data about inflammation, I mentioned inflammation earlier. We know that from a 2022 meta-analysis of 18 different studies, that they actually found that intermittent fasting significantly reduces markers for inflammation. And I mentioned that inflammation is an epidemic. You guys, I see babies in my practice who have inflammation of the brain. Many of those inflammation responses are related to heavy metal exposure from the various adjunctives that we put in products that we put on children. It's terrible. We know that fasting boosts brain function, and we know that it is highly likely to help prevent neurodegenerative diseases. I have a 2021 report that actually showed that fasting protects brain health by increasing the development of neurons. And one of the things we thought was that neurons were just kind of fixed. Neurons are those cells in the brain that talk to one another. And when they talk to one another, they release this signal. And that signal, it's an electrical chemical signal. And that signal then tells your body to do different things, right? Everything from thinking to eating to moving to speaking. So one of the things I love about this is that tells us that fasting can actually enhance cognitive process. All right. We know that fasting is involved in weight loss, but for some reason, that's kind of the only thing that people focus on. And that's the least of my concerns. But I am 50 years old and I am now a true menopausal woman. I'm in my 1 year of no menses, right? That's what they call menopause, is that 12 months between mensing and stopping mensing. And basically or stopping mensing for 12 months, I should say. And basically during this time, I'm paying close attention to what intermittent fasting is doing with this version of my body. And we know that it's not just about decreasing calories. We actually have several studies that showed that if you were just to fast roughly 3 to 6 months, that you actually reduce overall body weight, not losing muscle mass, by 9%. And that's a significant difference, okay? And then the last thing is autophagy. Autophagy is my very, very, very favorite thing to geek out about. Autophagy, autophagy, self-eat. This is the body's original reduce, reuse, recycle, okay? This is when your body says, wow, we haven't eaten. Good gracious, we get a break. Now we can actually do some first responder work. Now we don't have to focus on digestion and filtration and toxic release. We don't have to focus on all this external stimuli. Now what we can do is we actually go throughout our body and we could look at what cells are diseased or damaged that need to be reused, recycled, or removed. And the body is so brilliant. I mentioned to you, it likes to convert everything into energy. It's so flippin' smart. So your body doesn't just get rid of dying, diseased, and damaged cells. No, it looks at those cells and it says, what can we reuse? What can we use again? What can we use as energy as we're removing it from the body? That's the autophagy, self-eat. So it recycles and then it converts into energy and then it removes it from your body. Well, the thing about autophagy is you really can't get into autophagy until around that 14, 16 hours. There's some debates on the window. But here's the deal. If you're eating and you're waking up at 6, you're not. There are foods that put you into autophagy. There are very few foods will do that. And sadly, most Americans don't consume them a lot, like pomegranates. I honestly don't have a pomegranate in my refrigerator right now, or I don't have a pomegranate tree outside right now. But exercise can turn you into a as well. So it's my favorite. And one of the things I love about fasting is that if you decided to do something like intermittent fasting, you'd be able to sneak into that autophagy window and help your body do some reducing, some reusing, and some recycling. So I hope that y'all, I never want to say convinced, but I hope that you are connected to the idea of a couple things. Marketing has told you you need to eat constantly. Refrigerating has made it possible for you to do so. Your brain and your body and your beautiful system is smarter than you could ever imagine. You know how to convert just about everything into energy, but there are things that your body simply cannot process because it has never been exposed to some of these chemicals and some of these additives ever before. And that ends up becoming toxic buildup, and that ends up becoming disease, right? So on top of that, I hope you feel a great confidence around the idea that abstaining from food for 16 hours, frankly, it's a luxury. It's a luxury. One of the things that Mindy mentioned when we started this call is the reason we decided to do this was she was so generous to donate to a cause that we both feel very connected to. And it's this idea of feeding these refugees and these Haitian babies who many of them have not eaten in 2 days. In 2 days. And you know how much it costs for us to feed them? 9 cents a meal. Y'all, in this concept, fasting is a luxury. Whereas in so many parts of the world, fasting is actually just how they live. And they don't call it fasting. Some of them just call it food deprivation, or some of them call it access. But guess what? While these babies aren't thriving, and that's for a number of other reasons that has nothing to do specifically with fasting, while these babies aren't thriving, we know that there is a sweet spot to abstaining from food. And that when your body chooses to hang out in that sweet spot, somewhere between this 16 and 18 hours, you can do some healing. And I think that we Americans can use a fast from time to time. On top of that, I want to give you one little story, and then I'm going to run through a couple products. If you're super scared about fasting, let me tell you about my friend. Well, I don't know him, but I love his case study. There is actually a gentleman out of Scotland who fasted for 1 year and 17 days. Okay. So if you're super stressed out about the idea of fasting, let our friend be a good example for you that it is not something to be alarmed about. Fasting is actually wildly healthy. And I get questions all the times about certain types of behaviors when it comes to fasting. And I can tell you this, you don't have to overcomplicate it. If you're concerned a little bit about your hormone cycle, you may just decide to abstain from fasting during the window leading up to your period. I will tell you this though, Arbonne has a mushroom powder, and I have heard that one of those mushrooms known as lion's mane, if put into a cookie, it actually helped women during PMS to reduce anxiety, depression, and frustration by 33%. So I think even if you're fasting, we can introduce some mushrooms to your fasted experience that might help any of you who get a little hangry, okay? And I feel really excited about talking about a few of these products as we wrap this up. So we've got this 16-hour window. We're all certain that we can abstain from food during that window, but also during that window, isn't it wonderful to have the option to your body to get through some additional cellular cleansing? Well, one of the products that Arbonne launched is a matcha. Matcha is this fantastic tea that's actually processed and harvested in a really magical way. And what I love about it is the addition of these, not addition, but the access to these nice, beautiful polyphenols that actually help as liver detoxification mechanisms. They help with inflammation. They help with free radical elimination. So it's exciting to me to know that during my fasted window, I can wake up and I can have one of the Arbonne amazing matchas. After that, I'm going to break my fast. And one of the best ways to break your fast is with a protein forward program. In Arbonne, it is known as a golden renewal protein shake, which actually is a fantastic way to break your fast. But you can actually break your fast with any of Arbonne's protein shakes. They're very protein forward, 24 grams of protein plus the avocado oil. I love what avocado, or avocado in general, I love what MCT oils, I love what these mean for the brain. I love cooking with coconut oil. When I think about those healthy fats, I want more of them in my body. And Arbonne, to my knowledge, is the only protein available on the planet that's actually made with avocado oil. That is impressive. Such a healthy fat. So a great way to break your fast is with the protein. It could be the Golden Renewal, which is a wonderful detoxification program. You can use that for 7 days, and then you can continue your intermittent fasting journey with one of Arbonne's other protein flavor profiles. And then in the afternoon, you're simply going to eat your probiotic. It's now, when I say eat, I mean you kind of pop it like a pill. It's this tiny little capsule now, and it has 4 different probiotic strains in it, which is really exciting because Arbonne's only ever had a Bacillus coagulant and a Bacillus subtilis, and now this one has 4 different versions and a really high CFU. I believe it's 11 billion CFUs, 12 billion CFUs, so it's quite exciting. What this means is you get to have probiotics and prebiotics talking to second brain. Remember, the gut is the second brain, and you get to really focus on some repair of the gut lining, which is wildly, wildly thin, and you get to work on some waste removal and also some rebalancing. This is super, super simple. Arbonne just wanted to deliver some macros and some micros to help you during your unfasted and fasted window. And then when it comes to the food choices, we have a variety of healthy food options that we recommend for people as well. Wonderful recipes, wonderful foods, wonderful whole foods. I have a couple people that are carnivore, and they use this program because they wanted some additional cellular cleansing, and then they eat a carnivore lifestyle during their unfasted window. I have people who are vegan, and they eat a vegan lifestyle during their unfasted window. Y'all, I hope that you don't overcomplicate it. I hope you recognize that Arbonne is here to absolutely support and provide some benefits. I see a question about, are any of these keto? Yes, Arbonne actually has a shake that is keto approved. And basically, one of the beautiful things about intermittent fasting is it's going to shift you into ketone usage during the fasted window. But most of the time, y'all, I do not pay attention to the questions. And for that, I totally apologize. I just wanted to get all this information out there because I want you to be excited. I want you to feel connected to your body's beautiful ability. And if you're an Arbonne ambassador, I hope that you will recognize that your company has branded with something that is healing. Fasting is healing. And again, that is why the Bible tells me to fast and pray. And that is why many, many holistic, integrative, Eastern wellness professionals lead with fasting. We don't end with it. It's the beginning of a health treatment for many of us. So I hope that that helps. I didn't have any time to talk about mushrooms, which is totally sad because I basically am going by Mushroom Mo now because I'm so obsessed with these products. But I will tell you guys, Arbonne created something that I'm not even sure if they know how good it is. But these are the 5 most powerful mushrooms from a medicinal perspective that I have researched and studied. And I could not be more excited to add the mushrooms on the daily to my matcha or to my shake or to my clean tox tea at nighttime to help me in my intermittent fasted journey. Because that is like having an additional first responder in my first responder biological service, having these mushrooms go in there and do some cleanup. And why don't I just end on this little fact? Y'all, when I am gone, my body will turn back to dust because of mycelium. Mycelium is the parent of fungi, and fungi is the parent of mushrooms. What does that tell you? It simply tells you that mycelium is a master at breaking things down. Everything. A tree that falls in the forest and Mo Boegar when God takes her to heaven. What does this mean? It means that mycelium break things down that are ready to die. Do I want mycelium, mushrooms, fungi in my body to help break down things that are already dying? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Bring it on. So I'm so grateful for you tonight. And Mindy, I'm so grateful for your huge heart. Her donation and this time on this call fed 1,000 babies. She's sending 1,000 meals to Haiti just because of her huge heart. And hopefully in the last 34 minutes, you all have decided that of your body's ability to heal, and you want to give that gift away as well as to yourself.
Thank you so much, Mo. Can you hear me?
I'll try to peace out. I have loved this moment with you.
Well, isn't it kind of amazing that I think she kind of just glitched out on her very last sentence of her training, but she's kind of back. Mo, I wanted to let people know you just glitched out a little at the end that if they want to learn more about mushrooms, I saw you posting about that on your Instagram today. And I'm sure you also have a link on your Instagram for anybody else who wants to give back to Mission of Hope and help us feed. We have a huge goal of 11 million meals over this month, right?
Yes,
So
11 million.
thank you so much for your knowledge and for your servant heart to share with us tonight. My nerdy brain is just geeking out and spinning right now. I think I'm going to listen to this 100 times. We can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us and for your support through Mission of Hope. And thank you guys for all the people who hopped on tonight. We're just so happy to have you and so much better together, Mo. Thank you so, so, so much.
Thank you. Likewise. Love you, sister. Bye, guys.